All right. Come on in, everybody.
Yes, welcome, welcome.
Welcome. Who's
Good.
excited for this week? Woo! Right? It's been a big week. A lot happened. A lot going on this week.
I'm impressed. People are still excited.
I know. I'm glad we're at 12:30. Hopefully everybody is awake now from last night's party, right?
Yeah.
That was a lot. That was a lot of
had
fun.
plenty of Pedialyte in the room.
Isn't there an IV service you can get too?
There is.
It sounded like a few people knew what I was talking about right away. All right. Hey, no judgment, no judgment.
That's right.
Well, welcome everybody. This is promoting the health and well-being of your gender-expansive workforce. Our goal today is to talk about gender-affirming health benefits.
Yeah.
Just to introduce myself, my name is Hannah Schwab. My pronouns are she, her. I work at JP Chase. I'm one of our 3 co-chairs for our Gender Expansive Council. We focus on trans and gender nonconforming employees at JP Chase.
Very cool. Thanks, Hannah. I'm Leanne von Oshvega. I'm with IBM. My pronouns are they, she, he, in no particular order at any particular time. My day job is I am a go-to-market strategist, and my gay job is I co-chair or co-captain the Vital Few non-binary and trans squad. So we push our initiatives through there. It's very cool.
Yeah, I'm Allie Vallon. I'm with Accenture. I use they, them pronouns. I'm based in Philly. Woo woo.
Yay.
And let's see, my day job, I do marketing strategy for our global marketing team. And we can talk later about what that means. My gay job is that I am co-lead of our U.S. Pride ERG.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Thank you both. Thank you
Thanks,
both. Allie, can you tell us a little bit, just kind of start us off? What are we trying to accomplish today? What are we talking about?
Yeah, so this is going to be a really open conversation amongst us and in the future you all. And I actually have a couple of poll questions for you just to get us warmed up in a minute. But this is a conversation about creating gender-affirming health benefits for employees at all stages of their lives and for all shapes of families. So we're really trying to address the whole person internally and externally.
Yeah, there's so much for us to talk through with all of that, like you said, in all stages, so that really encompasses so much. Well, let's kind of start off here a little bit. So what are we even talking about when we talk about gender-affirming benefits, right? We can't really try to push for more affirming benefits unless we know what we're really pushing for, right? And so on the screen here, we have a couple examples when we talk about gender-affirming benefits. It can include a lot of these. This isn't comprehensive necessarily, but we talk about things like hormone replacement therapy, top surgery, bottom surgery, facial feminization, masculinization. There's a lot here, but there's some others that might not be thought of right away either. So like reproductive preservation or post-op care is one that often gets overlooked, and also continuation of sex-specific care. So things like prostate exams for trans women oftentimes gets rejected, right? If somebody has the female gender marker and they're going for a prostate exam, that might get denied. Right. And oftentimes when we push for all of this, trying to get more care, we kind of forget about what is that available for partners, or what about for our
children,
employees' kids as well, right?
Yeah.
So with that, this is kind of the comprehensive, or not comprehensive rather, but a good kind of baseline of what we're looking at.
Yeah. I'm just curious. We put a couple of poll questions out in the app, and so for people at home, people who are watching online, hello. So you can respond there, or just kind of a show of hands. I'm curious to know who's here to learn more about what gender-affirming health benefits are. Number 1. Okay, good percentage, all right. And who's here to learn about how you can build on the benefits you already have? Oh, wow.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap there too, right? Yeah. All right, and so just another quick question for y'all. Who's on an HR or benefits team? Okay.
Couple people in the room, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great because you are folks that everyone needs to talk to. So, and who's here representing an ERG like me? Wow. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. And who's doing both?
There we go.
All right.
Yeah, that is the
That's
Yeah,
right.
let's
round
give
of
her a round of applause. That's a lot to do.
Yeah.
For sure. No, that's quite a bit. And so we're going to have some takeaways for all of you here as we go along. So let's kind of continue on a little bit here. So when we kind of talk a little bit about gender affirming benefits, there's a few things to keep in mind, right? So we talked about some of the examples here, and but also to talk about, you can't talk about gender affirming benefits without talking about WPATH, right? And for those of you that aren't aware, the WPATH is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. It's a bit of a mouthful, but so WPATH is a little bit easier. But that organization, it's been around for a long, long time, I think since the 80s, keep me honest here, and has kind of grown and grown and grown. And it's a collection of physicians, surgeons, mental health providers, and researchers that kind of set the core base for providing care to the trans and gender nonconforming community. On a not exactly regular basis, they publish a set of standards of care. As we mentioned here, the SOC, or standards of care, and those are those clinical guidelines for health professionals to kind of assist in providing care to the trans and gender diverse community, right? We've got a bit of a quote from that. The standards for promoting optimal health care and guiding the treatment of people experiencing gender dysphoria. Something to keep in mind with the standards of care, they are written to be flexible. So the most recent version of it just came out about a month ago, I believe. And in that, there's an entire section devoted to the flexibility of these standards. I cannot stress enough the flexibility piece, because the guidelines that they put in place, and how many are familiar with some of these guidelines by a show of hands? Yep. Quite a few of you. And for better or worse, a lot of the trans and gender nonconforming community, we have to be familiar with it, right? Because if we're not, we're going to get denied and denied and denied and denied care. The very beginning of the standards of care talk about that flexibility. And what that really means is that care should be dictated by the patient and their care team. And that these are just general guidelines to help provide that care, but it's not set in stone. Unfortunately, a lot of times these rules are kind of applied to be set in stone by insurance providers. How many people know about having to get letters and having to, quite a few people in the room, and I'm sure online as well. It's a pain in the ass, isn't it? Yeah. So something to just fall back on when you do get pushback, when you do talk with benefits teams, when you do talk to insurance providers, is that flexibility piece. Because a lot of what their requirements are based on are the WPATH standards of care. And by basing that on that, they need to follow those flexibility guidelines as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So next, we're going to talk about kind of the business case a little bit, right? The what and why. So we talked about kind of what we're talking about with gender affirming benefits. Now, why do we need it? Why is it important? And I think that's something that often gets overlooked, right? Like top surgery, facial feminism, those are all just cosmetic, right? Like,
right.
No, they're really not. They are medically necessary. They're based on a lot of research from folks associated with the WPATH organization. They are in line with standards of medical best practice. They are, they're there to promote quality of life. How many people have? I'm not going to open up that question, but that's going to get too heavy because I know that being denied care that I needed hit me very hard, and it didn't just happen once; it happened multiple times, time over time over time, and that hurts to try as hard as you can to get coverage and then just be denied.
And hearing the word no over and over again, like how did that affect your journey? Like did it slow you down? Did it take any of the wind out of yourselves?
I remember the second time I was denied for a procedure, I called my therapist, bawling my eyes out.
Yeah. It's devastating.
It is. It really is. It's traumatic, really, when it comes down to it. And I think, a lot of the rhetoric or the talk we get back is that gender affirming care is, and we have that on the right? We get that it's experimental, it's cosmetic, or it's just for convenience. How many people here think that gender affirming care is convenient at all? Yeah, not a single person,
Show of
right?
hands.
Hell no, there's nothing convenient about that. My gosh.
Changing your whole life.
Yeah, just casually.
Just small,
Yeah.
small pieces,
I
right?
might do that this weekend.
I was thinking of trans.
You think so?
Yeah, I was like, you want to
Cool.
do something afterward?
Absolutely. Let's talk. But, something to just kind of hone in on also is that experimental piece. That was something that I heard after I came out was from family members, was like, well, the surgery is experimental. Like, well, first off, I just came out. We're not even talking about surgery. But, it is based on decades of clinical research and experience. This is just a small subset, and again, I have to keep referring back to the new standards of care because this is where I pulled a lot of this, right? This is just a small subset of some of the studies, the peer-reviewed studies that go into the care here. It's not experimental.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we mention that we're uploading this presentation to the app so everyone will have access to it. And this is your slide to take back when you need to have these conversations.
This is your toolkit, arm
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's kind of the goal today, right, is to build that toolkit for everybody,
Right.
building that business
Framework.
case.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So we've talked about kind of the what, the why this is important. Let's kind of talk a little bit about now. Great, we know it's important. We know what we need. So how do we get it? Right. So the first is to kind of establish what's your current coverage look like. What do you provide today? We did that a little, quite a bit through word of mouth to start. One of our great leaders went around and asked people in different parts of the world what was covered in their country. The best way to do it, we've since then had to partner with our benefits team because the word of mouth is great, but we really want that validated by the benefits team too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And also just that listening to the experience of everyone else, right? Because we might on paper say that something's covered, but what is accessing that look like?
Design versus delivery, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have them, but can we use them? And then if we can use them, how convenient is it to get to the doctor?
Absolutely.
How do we bridge those gaps?
Right.
Really?
Yeah. And the other piece and what kind of brought all of us together was comparing coverage, right? And our great partners at HRC as well helped us put together a benefits kind of roundtable discussion last year. I had several employees come to me and tell me, well, Accenture, I used to work at Accenture and they have better benefits than us. Or I used to work at IBM and they have better benefits than us. I'm like, okay,
We
but
did the same thing about you.
Did you?
Yeah, JP Morgan, we hear it. It
Really?
goes all the ways. I think they're...
It was wrong at that time. So you all did have better benefits than us. But I mean, what do I do with that, right? I can't go to my benefits team and say, hey, well, Jane said that Accenture has better benefits. For our benefits people in the room, do you think you would action on that if I just said so-and-so told me they've,
Right.
Seeing a lot of shaking heads, no, right? So for us to be able to meet and come together, with partnered with HRC, and we actually had a representative from WPATH there as well, to be able to talk through like what all you are providing for your employees and how we kind of stack up against that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that really helped us expand benefits this past July.
Nice.
So I can't thank both of you enough for all of that help from your companies, so thank you.
Well, and that also points out something, this is just occurring to me, that, you don't have to do this by yourself.
Right.
Let's take advantage of the community and all of the information that's out there and all of the experience that's out there. And that's something we want to accomplish here too. So we know that this is an audience of people here and at home who have an appetite to do something with this information. So connect with each other.
Yeah, and I think that also goes back to what you were saying too, of like what it felt like for me to be denied. It felt lonely,
Right.
isolating, right?
Who could you call and ask what are their next steps? How did they handle it?
Exactly, right. And so to be able to partner with you all has been wonderful.
Definitely.
So kind of what's next? Once you kind of put together your coverage, you understand what other companies are providing, what you're looking for. Next is kind of putting your proposal together, right? Executive sponsorship is so important. I know that for me and actually some of our other ERG leaders at our company tried to get involved in benefits and tried to push, and they were told at the time that they're just, an employee, they can't contribute, they can't push the needle. I know. But to bring in a senior leader to help push that over the edge and help kind of navigate what the required approvals were and those tough conversations, I mean, that meant the world. And I'm sure everybody's heard a lot from Brad Baumel this week and JP Morgan Chase. And he was instrumental in helping us kind of get the right people on the phone and talking through what those issues were.
Yeah, and oftentimes these are the same people that can get you in contact with your local governments or, and push on bigger policy change and things like that. So
yeah,
it's important to have their buy-in for sure.
100%.
100%.
Absolutely.
And back to, previous slides, doing the research, getting that foundation under your belt because you're equipping that executive with the information they need to make the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good point too, and kind of leads into the other piece that we talk about here, which is storytelling.
Right.
I mean, storytelling is a huge theme of this whole week, right? We're talking about the power of storytelling, and it is incredibly powerful. I know for me, after going through that and being denied over and over again, I ended up just breaking down and crying in a managing director's office, just saying, I'm so frustrated, and that was powerful. She listened, she heard, she knew, she could really tell like that, how, impactful that was. And that helped me, connect to the right people and get involved with the Office of LGBT+ Affairs and kind of start moving that forward. But I think that there's something to be said too that like I said before, that was traumatic for me to encounter, and so I had to relive that trauma just to
go try again.
Exactly.
And how many folks stop along the way because of that trauma?
True.
Or don't make it to their managing director's office to even talk about it and just kind of leave it at the table.
Yeah.
And wonder if it's worth the exhaustion to actually go through that part.
It is, right.
Yeah.
And it's tough to weigh that, right? Because it's so heavy for me. Do I want to take on more of that burden, have to relive my trauma just to get the care that I need?
Right.
Right. So I think that's kind of, for me, a little bit of a call to action for our benefits folks in the room and online as well of don't wait. Don't wait for people to have to bring their trauma to you.
Right.
Listen, ask the questions, find out, be proactive in asking what people need. So just kind of summarizing kind of what we talked about, right? So talking through the specific, what you want to change within your benefits space, why that's necessary, and leveraging the resources that are out there, comparing that coverage with great partners, and then leveraging those resources through like WPATH and your executive sponsors to really help put that business case together for why this is needed.
Yeah.
Allie, I want to kind of turn over to you to talk a little bit further on like how can we continue on?
Yeah, so we've talked so far about what it is this conversation is about, where to start. So best case scenario, you're actually on your path, you're getting there. You've developed something. How are you going to make it live for your people? Hannah touched on, there are some challenges here. You're working with trauma in most, if not all, cases. What you're looking at is actually developing, again, a whole person view. So you've got to start thinking at this point about ongoing care. Working with that trauma, addressing that trauma as you go, making it easier for your people to access these benefits. Then the people that we're talking about, your employees, they're going through different life stages. They may be growing their family. They may, if you're lucky enough to have people with you for a long time, they're getting older, right? Their health needs will change as they age. And, I mean, elephant in the room, we've got changing politics.
Gosh, that's so hard to address, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's wild, and there's so many roadblocks being put up to everything, and it's very scary, right?
Right.
This care that we just talked about of how medically necessary it is, and it's wild that people.
And yet it's debatable at that level.
Right.
It seems still as humans. So.
Yeah.
And what other care is debatable to this level, right?
That's a good point.
Is cancer treatment a political debate?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all a lot to cope with, but there are opportunities in the challenges. So, we tried to kind of pair the challenge and the opportunity. When you're working with trauma, it's an opportunity to marry some benefits together that maybe were separate. I mean, that's something that we had at Accenture. We had health benefits, we had gender affirming benefits, but they weren't together. They weren't addressing a person's mind and body. So we made it so that those things lived in concert. You can find them together. Because that's genuinely what a lot of people will need.
Yeah.
You need to continue to listen, throughout this entire process. And what was skip back one more if you would,
Sure,
Hannah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. On the politics. I think this has come up several times already this week, but you've got to develop a system that can adapt over time, right? Think in terms of systems. Think in terms of agile planning. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So make sure that you have not built a framework that's locked in place.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the scary reality we have to think about, right? Because there is a lot of anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ+ bills in the U.S. and not just the U.S., around the globe. Right. And so you're right. That's what we're facing right now. But who knows what tomorrow is going to bring?
Yeah. And a lot of people are asking, what are the benefits I have today, and will I still have them tomorrow?
How heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you mean. I've had a lot of conversations with folks at our company, and the heartbreaking stories of people worried about being prosecuted for child abuse or for being denied health care coverage or whatever, and it's taxing. It's very tough.
So, all of this a lot of times comes down to communication. And communication is an ever-evolving landscape too, right? You've got new people coming into the company. You've got turnover among the people that have the knowledge, that built the knowledge within the company. Are they going to be there tomorrow? You've got to identify your core audiences, who you're trying to reach, and also identify untapped audiences, people who don't know yet that they will need these benefits for themselves, for a family member.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to figure out how you're going to store all this information so people can access it when they need it. And you've got to do all this in the context of maintaining their privacy.
I want to call back to the identifying core audiences too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good call to action to everyone in the room and online, and explaining these benefits to people that are maybe not within the community, because you mentioned about family members too, right? And I know several people that I don't think would have even thought about gender-affirming benefits until suddenly their child came out. And now they're like, oh my God, well, what does my company cover?
Right.
I don't even know what gender-affirming benefits are, right? So don't wait until it's time to start looking at benefits. Understand what they are, right?
Yeah.
Understand the plight of the community.
Yeah, you can't over-communicate this stuff.
So true.
Yeah.
I know for us, and I mentioned earlier, thanks to your help and our partners at HRC, we just expanded benefits in July. Leading up to that, we did a lot of push of kind of exactly what we wanted to have covered. Right? We talked a little bit about some of those examples earlier. And a big piece of that was top surgery for trans women. We were always told that's not covered. We don't have that. It's, again, cosmetic, right? That's that piece. And we kept saying, well, we want that as part of this expansion. We want that as part of this expansion. And in one of our first or second conversations, they said, well, we've actually had that. We've had it for about 3 years. And I was livid. I'm like, we've had this for 3 years and we didn't know about it? Mm-hmm. I had so many employees tell me, well, I want this, I want that, and it wasn't covered. And so it goes back to that communication piece.
Yeah.
When we open up for some, we got to tell people.
It's really important for the onboarding of new hires.
Yeah.
I know that we're trying to work on really getting the information out there, getting it disseminated to who needs it, and to everyone in the company, what's available, and then building those resources where they can come for when they need more information, and really setting it up to allow it to be anonymous, so they don't have to come out to their upper management and so on and so forth. So the new hire stuff is it's really imperative. It's a good place to start.
That's so important, and I like that of, you know, it's almost, you can give all of the information to everyone, regardless of identity, right? Because you're right, you don't know who might need it.
I read medical benefits for stuff that doesn't cover me personally, right? But it's good to know.
It is, and I think that goes also to like the idea of ERGs and things too, right? Of don't just join the ones that affect you or that impact that you're a part of, right? Understand what every community's needs are.
That's right.
It's a great call out.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that point about making clear what the benefits are, because I think this is something folks might face as you go back to your organizations. For some reason, there's like a perception that this needs to be kept close, like that this is something that, you know, we have it. When people ask about it, we'll tell them. Well, no. No, this doesn't need to be a state secret. This is a human right, and treat it as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And building resources around it too, right? Of showing people how to, you know, be able to take advantage of those.
Definitely.
Yeah, and some of this is education too, which gets to the opportunities. You know, this is an opportunity to educate other parts of your organization on why this matters, what we have, how to communicate it, why to communicate it, and when to communicate it, which is all the time.
And I think too that there's, you know, there's a line as well, that there's maybe a gray area or so of how you want to communicate things, right? It's not as if we're gonna, you know, send out a mass email with every, you know, code that's covered or anything like that, right? That's a little overboard, but you can still explain. That's kind of the extreme, but the other extreme of not saying anything, like that's just as bad. So, if not worse. So there's a line, there's a way to kind of find the middle ground there of how you're, but regardless, the communication is so key.
Yeah, our HR folks in the room are familiar with how to make Greek something that everyone can understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's something important too, maybe like a liaison that works with your employees and your medical and your leadership to help you out better understand. Yeah, because it's all Greek sometimes, like you said.
Exactly.
What does this mean?
If you don't have the language to ask for what you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good call out.
Yeah.
So what about, Allie, what about kind of accessing, right? So like I said, we kind of expanded benefits, but what about the next step, right? Being able to access that.
Yeah, and so this is kind of what we're getting to. We've touched on this a lot, is that it's not enough to have this information. You need to put it where people can find it. It's also a question of accessing exactly what benefits you need when you need them. And the requirements for receiving the care you need may change over time. You know, a particular insurance carrier may develop new policies, right? So you've got to stay up to date with that. That's an opportunity also to evaluate your providers, your insurance providers, and ask, are you still meeting our needs? If not, we may have to go elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Yeah, and then, you know, we've touched on the fact that the language around this changes a lot, so that's a call to action for your organization to stay up to date with the latest terminology, the latest understanding. And, you know, as Hannah said, you need employee advocates. You need people who can be there to help navigate this, you know, sea of information. Ocean
of it, galaxy of information. Yes, there's so much. There's so much information. Yeah, I think the access is, it's that other piece, right? You can expand those benefits, and that's great. But how do I as an employee actually take advantage of that? Right. And so, you know, hair removal or something like that. Well, great. So that might be a benefit that's offered. But what does it actually look like? Being able to access that.
And what happens if it's denied? If you've got a provider who has assured you that, oh, yeah, that is covered.
Yeah.
But the employee gets a different story.
Yep, absolutely. It's great too that, and I think you had mentioned a second ago about, kind of concierge stuff too, and I think there's, great companies like Included Health that really help with that kind of being able to navigate that and helping people access that, right? Which is, it's a scary, scary world to be able to try to get that coverage.
It's like law, right? Like you have to have someone to interpret it for you. Right. The laws that we're supposed to understand to follow. I feel like medical benefits are kind of set up the same way, right? They're for us, they're here to protect us, to help us, but you gotta like understand it.
I love that comparison. I feel like I'm a seasoned attorney when it comes to gender affirming benefits some days. So no, I love that comparison. It's great. So what about Leanne? What about kind of?
So I'll take this. Really. So they've given you the what and the why, and this is like the how do we keep it going and the ongoing monitoring. Really, it's things like this, meeting at the summit, talking to your clients, your partners, getting feedback from your employees, all the way from the bottom and pushing it all the way to the top, getting that buy-in from your senior executives to go, help make the changes, because while the employees at the bottom can fight and rage, pushing it up and great ideas only go so far, right? But reaching out and working with other companies is helpful, because I can come back and say, well, JP Morgan Chase is doing this, and like you said, nobody wants to hear that. So it's like, how do we
wait a minute,
how do we solve this solution?
That's not allowed.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then again, leveraging the relationships that you've made here at the summit, and staying in contact. If something changes, make those connections to reach out, like you. Hopefully you made a connection to be able to call and complain to someone the next time that something happens. And same, from a work aspect of your organization, call and complain and figure out between you and your folks, like how can we work together to make it better for all of us.
Yeah, really. And you've touched on this, Lee, but it's a differentiator for you as an employer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you need to make a business case, there's a business case here. It's your current employees and your future employees that are asking these questions, that are asking what benefits can I access and how easy is it?
People are much more intelligent about how they're choosing companies to work for.
Yeah.
I know I am very intentional with who I work for, because they represent me, I represent them, and I want to be taken care of too, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it will be leveraged as, am I included? What does it look like? Do I want to work here? Do you want me to work here?
Right.
And really, that's a good question.
Am I going to say good things about this company when I leave and go somewhere else?
Well, and there's there was a session yesterday on the Great Resignation, right? And the people that leave their companies because their needs are not being met. And I mean that's right in line with our conversation today, right? If we don't have the coverage that our employees need, they're not going to stay, and we can't ask them to. Right, and we're going to try as hard as we can to get the coverage that they need.
Right.
But if that's going to take 6 months, a year, 2 years, I can't ask somebody to say, well, it's just going to be 2 years before I can get that benefit.
Right. And you said even trying, like, are they willing to try? And that's an important place to start. Are you willing to try for me? Because I'm here to try for you. So. Yeah. I love the feedback loop, and then the closed feedback loop, which I'll probably talk more about, but really when you get that feedback, letting them know that we've heard you, we're doing something, here are the actions we've done, that's really helpful for employees too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love kind of how you call out to around leveraging relationships here, and it's like we've talked about doing that roundtable discussion last year, and I know for me it's like, great, okay, I got those benefits I needed, okay, goodbye, I'm good, I'm gonna go, I'm good, right? But that's not the case. We might be
so hopefully you
in line.
Talk to your coworkers, and they were like, "Great, now we need this, and this."
Well, and that's exactly what happened. But it's that's not a one and done thing, right? Because we might be on par or leading the way when it comes to benefits today, but maybe not tomorrow.
Maybe not tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And then, really expanding this across the globe. What does that look like? Setting a baseline for coverage in each country is super important. I know it's, the laws are different. What does that look like? What is your employee safety look like? The immediate, and what do they need right away, right? So how to prioritize those things, like who needs it the most? Who needs it the fast? Like who's in the most, right? Need is really where we're at. And then being able to make those decisions from there.
At one point in the journey,
Right.
and some countries are at another. And
Right.
Yeah.
And navigating those, across it's interesting. It's difficult in the sense of like you want to help everyone and get the same benefits for
Right.
everyone, but even the local laws and regulations and understanding the intricacies of those. But it's important to get that out and understand what we have, what we need, and then build from there, really. So.
Yeah.
And then, the different governments kind of ties in. Make sure that it's important for us to like really hear our people and how they're experiencing it in a different country. Being in the U.S., we have our own challenges. Different geos are going to have their own challenges with their governments. And it's really just listening. How can we help you? And I may not be able to help them personally with anything other than listening. But sometimes that's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe you can get them in touch with someone else. So that's important.
And the other part of that is if you're a company with locations in other countries, you may have employees who are considering
Moving,
relocating
yeah.
to another country, to another office. How will you help them navigate that?
Even in the U.S., just moving states because of laws dropping so quickly.
Right.
It's a big push and it's a big worry.
Yeah.
And then where are those people? Is most of your base in those states or in those countries or in those cities that are under fire? And then how do we move? So
There's a lot to consider.
There's a lot to consider.
There's a lot.
But with keeping up with the folks you've met here, it's that you're going to be able to use that as a litmus and like, what are you guys doing? How is it going for you? How can we help? I love gathering ideas and pushing those forward.
I think you're absolutely right. And when it comes to kind of expanding that too, it's definitely it's got to be a crawl, walk, run, right? Like we can't just go and say, well, great, we expanded benefits in one country, great, we're just going to do that everywhere, right? Like that's flip a switch and that's done.
Right.
I wish it was, but it's not,
nice.
and something that you also talk about here is what's the availability of providers too.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah,
like you brought up.
please.
We have all this stuff. I mentioned earlier like design versus delivery, but really considering, like I said, the availability of what's available in that country. And even though we have these benefits, can we use them? I think it's important to listen to our people that are going through this and getting that feedback. I had feedback from a colleague, and they were talking about getting denied and what that looks like. And it's daunting for, just to even understand and how are they going to get, again, to that next step, to the available resource, right? So that's it.
Yeah, and it's, even though, I had that experience of being denied several times, but it was still a covered benefit for me. And that's still a privilege that I have that other folks that still work for our company, maybe in other parts of the world, maybe they don't have that, right? Like it was still traumatic for me to be denied, but they may not even have that opportunity to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
And then figure out how we're going to change all this, right? How do we help those folks? Can we get them to these places and stuff like that? So building that.
It's a tough conversation too, right? I know you talked about prioritization as well, because as much as we'd like that just to be a flip the switch, right? Our benefits team has a lot to do, and yeah, please.
No, it's just that was just pure empathy right there.
No, it's quite a bit, right? And there has to be on our end a level of patience as well, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen so quickly.
Right.
It might seem like that, and I think you had said earlier about the kind of the mystique around benefits, right? Or the like keeping it held close a little bit. Oops, my mic. But so it does seem like, there's this mystery behind the curtain, and why don't they just flip the switch? But there's a lot going on behind the scene.
And it sucks because we're all about equity, right? We're all about everybody having equal access.
Yeah. And I know I bring that up because I've had some folks that have had issues with trying to get coverage, and of course I've talked about that, right? And I had one person recently just say, "Is our benefits team purposely putting up roadblocks in front of me?" And I think I received that while I was on a call with our benefits team, and I was like, I had to step away from it for a second because I felt that person's struggle, I felt their pain, but also I'm on the call with these people who are so dedicated to trying to find a resolution too. And so it is not an us versus them, it has to be a partnership.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely. And you had mentioned kind of keeping us all separate, like that keeps us all silent, right?
Yes.
So the more that we reach out and we talk to each other and we uncover these big mysteries of what's going on, it's no big secret. We're all hopefully working on most of the same stuff, right? We're all trying to get to the same place where we're all whole, happy, healthy, right? In work, in home, in life. So definitely leverage these connections you've made here, keep in touch, and keep talking, really.
Yeah. And I want to speak too around the prioritization that is mentioned here as well, around when we talk about like everybody's workload and what they're able to take on. So thinking about, okay, well, if we can't do all of it at the same time, how do we prioritize? Where do we look at which countries, right? Do you have self-ID data that tells you what your trans headcount, your gender diverse headcount looks like in a given region? Right? So you have so many people in one part of the world. Maybe that's where you need to look. But maybe that's where everybody is, and maybe the coverage is perfect. So maybe not there. Maybe it's somewhere. Maybe you look at where the greatest disparity of coverage is. Yeah. So there's a lot to consider with that. Awesome.
Go ahead.
Please. Well, that kind of wraps everything up. This is kind of to summarize the things that we talked about today, talking about what we mean when we talk about gender affirming benefits. And please, if you're not familiar with the WPATH standards of care, please take a look at those and familiarize yourself with them. The new version is twice the size as the last version, so you've got quite a bit of reading to do. And then just remember and really take away the medical necessity of that. That helps build your business case, right? I think a business case, because I hear that phrase so many times this week, and it's because we have to use that, right? We have to build that business case.
We're all going back to businesses.
That's right.
Wait, we do?
Speaking of that.
Are you sure? I thought it was just party time all the time, right? That convention, we're going to all feel that convention drop after this, right, on Monday probably?
Yeah, and a little light reading of WPATH on the...
That's good.
I think we've got time for a Q&A.
Let's do it.
I think we have a couple of questions from chat, from
Let's
online.
do the chat questions for just a moment.
Let's do it.
We do. Thanks so much, and hello to our online audience who've been chatting very vigorously.
Oh, excellent.
All right. Hopefully good things.
How do you centralise information so everyone knows where the best information is available?
That's a really good question. We've been talking about that. So we have space that is put out all over our corporation. It's the one landing, it's LGBTQ space. Everyone can come in. It literally has everything you need from medical benefits, who to talk to about what, who to go to. It's live, it's a living, so it's constantly being changed because we're dynamic folks, and we require changes often. We're always changing, so it keeps terms up to date. Things are current, and it's really important to keep it centralized so we can update it at the same time.
Yeah. And it's another opportunity to build bridges, right, between organizations. So you're probably going to need to work with marketing and maybe legal. Your tech organization to help enable all of this.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways you can kind of centralize it, right? Like, do you have a company intranet or something like that where you can build a page out and have those resources built? Work with your benefits team to do that. Don't try to create the resources on your own. You definitely want to partner with those people, right? whether it's an intranet or a SharePoint or something like that. I think there's a lot of ways you can centralize it. I think it's less about the centralization and more about the communication we talked about.
Yep.
You can have a resource page, you can have a place to go with this, but if people don't know where it is or know how to get to it, then it's pointless.
That's an excellent point, yeah.
Jen?
So speaking of that, the issue of denial came up in the virtual chat as well, and we've spoken about that a bit already.
Yep.
Do you have like a step-by-step or communication tips and tricks or a specific process that you follow when that denial comes up that helps to separate it from the individualised experience into whatever bureaucratic process is going to unfold?
Sure.
I like to get into the nitty-gritty of things, so I want people to show me exactly the words on the page. You denied me, why? Tell me exactly why you denied me. Show me in the medical plan policy why that was denied, and I'll show you why you shouldn't have denied me. So my answer to that, I guess, is to pull your coverage and find out exactly and talk to your benefits, talk to your insurance provider directly and find out the exact. And sometimes the first person you talk to might not know. They might give you an answer you don't want to hear, or maybe the wrong answer. It's okay to push. It doesn't mean they're your enemy. It doesn't mean you're fighting against anybody. It's frustrating. It sure as hell it is frustrating, but push. It's okay to ask for a supervisor to say, hey, I really need to understand what I need to take advantage of this coverage, because this denial shouldn't happen.
And I will add on to that. It is another case where a concierge, a healthcare concierge, is your best friend.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think the next step is, we talked a little bit earlier about executive sponsorship too. If you're not getting the resolution you need, bring in senior leaders. They're the ones who can connect you with the right people. They can bring the right folks into the room and help navigate those tough situations.
Yep.
Please. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Chris. I'm with Applied Materials. I loved what you had to say about the value of sharing negative experiences. Even if nothing can be done, it's helpful to just be heard and to know you're not alone. And I know that we're all very good at doing that in informal spaces, and we're talking amongst ourselves. But organizations tend to get scared when you want to have more formal spaces for that and to bring it into the open. And there's this desire to kind of not have that be part of kind of the formal corporate conversation, or to have set spaces for that. So I was wondering, what do you do to kind of help demonstrate the value and create those more formal spaces where people can share their negative experiences more openly?
Yeah. Everybody want to take that?
I can share that we have spaces, safe spaces for chats, where it's not anonymous, where we can all see who's on the call, so to speak, but it is a safe space. It's not recorded. It doesn't go outside of whatever. And then, we also have an off-grid Slack that allows you to anonymize yourself, and then we encourage folks to use that. And then inside of Slack as well, we have other supporting channels, but to create those spaces off-grid it's important, because it allows you to say the negative things that you maybe wouldn't say on company property, we'll say.
Yeah.
So
I think that's important. I mean,
Yeah.
it's also important to provide a sanctioned space where people can be open and honest about what they need, because oftentimes that's where you learn where your gaps are. So we have a private chat for members of our trans and gender nonconforming group in the U.S. So a lot of questions get surfaced there and can be addressed there or taken away to be addressed and brought back, right? I think the other thing that often is helpful, just in the interest of getting those stories out there, is to create spaces, provide opportunities for people who have stories and feel comfortable sharing them, in the way that in a space where allies can be there, where supporters can be there, members of other organizations can be there, to hear those stories and use that as information, as a foundation for their own knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's tricky though. As I'm saying that, I'm thinking, you can't just take someone's story.
Right.
You have to ask permission if you're going to use one of those stories that you hear.
Well, and I think that's also, we've talked a lot about, and I'm probably a broken record about executive sponsors and those key leaders that can help make those connections, because that is where you can maybe start more informal and they can help you move to more of a formal, move to more of the formal conversations. We used to have a LGBT plus executive council that was focused on moving our agenda forward prior to our Office of LGBT plus Affairs. And that's where I started with it, right? Was I met with this managing director. Yes, I bawled my eyes out to her. But the next step was, she's like, I need you to take this to our executive council. And that's where that became more of the formal conversation. Great question, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we got one over here.
Please, yeah.
Hi, Mike Milligan, Northrop Grumman.
Hi, Mike.
I just had a question, either insights or recommendations for, in the conversation of denials, for the gender fluid folk. I personally had experience where I've gone and looked through what services can I get, electrolysis, therapy, seemingly smaller things compared to like gender reassignment or, top surgeries, and was denied because I was not willing to go on HRT. To get a therapy session, I had to go and tell them that I was interested in being on HRT, which I'm not.
Yep.
And
I just want to say there are no small services.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, I think we should,
That's true.
No, you're absolutely right. There are no small services. And Mike, I think what I would say to that is that goes back to what we talked about earlier with the flexibility. Really leverage the standards of care and the flexibility that they talk about. I'm not going to say that that's the end-all be-all, that that's going to be the golden answer that's going to solve it for you. But they set out those guidelines. They are guidelines. They're not set in stone rules. There's there to be the guidelines. And I think using that to kind of push back and say, like, this is my care team. Go back to your care team, whether it's a mental health provider, your primary care, your physician, whomever, and say, make sure that they're signing off that you do need these procedures, and being able to push the needle forward there from there.
I just want to highlight something. I thank you so much for this question, because so many people downplay their own needs, and it is life and death. It really is. What we're talking about here is life and death.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I know. I've had some tough conversations about that this past year, with people saying that their child may not make it to their birthday if they couldn't, have the procedures they need, and that's tough.
Yeah.
Next question, yeah, please, or wherever. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
back here. Sorry, I'm not the one running.
They're everywhere.
Thank
That's
you.
okay. Hey, I'm Irene. I use she, her pronouns. I'm
Thank
from
you.
Mass Mutual. I would be considered a very proud child abuser in many states in the United States.
Woo!
So first, I really don't have a question. I just want to say leveraging connections are so important. We are not in competition with each other.
That's right.
No.
We want to join together to get the best benefits for our people. I often hear there'll be a rush on the benefits. There's not going to be a freaking rush on the benefits, right? People aren't going to raise their hand because they want to have gender confirmation surgery because you're offering it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that because that will come up. I think another part of the problem we have to think about is that the insurance companies are part of the problem, right? They don't have the experience. They don't understand the benefits. They don't understand the people, right? And that it is life-saving. We'll remove a breast that is capsuling, but we're not going to put one back in because you're
Yep.
trans. Like, what does that mean? Like, are you out of your mind? Anyway, so they're a part of the problem. Doctors are a part of the problem. They are so sought out. They're very specialized. My kid is not going to a doctor who has done this surgery twice, right? My kid is going to have the doctor that I want that's done it 30 times, and I don't care where they are. That's where I'm going. And those doctors don't always want to work with insurance companies because they suck. So I shouldn't be the first person in the United States to have a pre-negotiated agreement with Cigna for my daughter's gender confirmation surgery with my physician. First person, right?
Wow.
That is not okay. And I will say at my own company, I had to use leverage with my HR folks who did step in for me, but I'm really loud, right? So what if you're not loud? And no parent and no trans person, so I'm sorry for your experiences, should have to be doing that while facing these types of surgeries, right? So that's what I got.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Oh,
Can I
thank you.
just add, for everyone here from an insurance company, we love you.
But we'd also like to talk to you after. No.
Right here, yeah, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Savannah from JP Morgan. I just echo everyone. I think I want to ask a question about priority because this community's priority is very different from could be the executives that we try to partner with.
Right.
So in my case, 12 years ago in New York, I had the benefit of paying close to $0 to have my twin boys. Moved 2 months later to Hong Kong. My colleague at JP Morgan had single women, LGBT, had to fly to Thailand to get IVF, etc. So my question is like this year, I mean, after the abortion bill, sadly, but then a lot of corporations come out and say, we'll fly the employees to the States, right? So that became a high priority, top priority the next day. So how do we as a group to help educate about the priority is different, this community? I mean, the fact that we know kids are precious, but we couldn't even have kids by, with the basic healthcare in a lot of the countries. And then all these other surgeries that we all talk about. My wife wants to maybe have top surgery, maybe. We didn't even think about that too much, but then, this is part of who this community is. So how can we help make it top priority like for our community, especially DEI is so important with hiring. They all want to get us. And my last thing is, in a recent recruitment event I have, the first question I ask is, what is the health benefit at JP Morgan?
I think what you're talking about there is really kind of, you almost answered your own question there, right? Is around the business case for it. And I think our folks at O&EQual have some of the good statistics around. I think it's around 28% of the incoming workforce identifies as LGBTQ+. And a large subset of that is gender diverse as well. That's right. So many people are coming into the workforce, and that's what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So that helps you build that business case to say, if you want more trans talent, if you want to hire anybody, you're going to need to provide these things. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think
That's it.
Yeah.
I think we're actually coming up on time, unless we have time for one more. We have time for one more. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I actually have a question. So,
Oh, goodness.
I'm talking loud. Gerard Combs Harris, he, him, his pronouns from Accenture. This has been a powerful experience to hear these stories and walking us through this important topic. One thing I'm about is sustaining the momentum going forward. So what is one thing that all of us can do after we leave this session, go back to our respective organizations to enable the conversation that we've had today in the communities that we serve?
Thank you, Trot. I appreciate that. Hallie, do you want to start?
Well, I think, again, this is a great place to make connections. Is there anyone in the room who would volunteer to be a mentor for someone here who's just starting out, trying to figure things out?
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah?
Take a look around. These people are offering, to be your mentor, definitely. Yeah, I'm available afterward too. I'm available after this session if anyone wants to stay and talk.
Yeah, same here, and we can meet outside after the session.
Well, thank
I would say just for everyone, as we said before, if you're in HR benefits position, to be active in listening to your employees, and for those of you that need this, be active in speaking up for what you need.
That's right. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. That concludes the session. Thank you. We hope you have a great rest of your week.